One more thing I forgot to mention was a situation between me and Amy and then me and Mom last weekend. So basically Amy was like sitting on the couch and she basically took over the whole couch, and she saw me approaching with food, wanting to sit down on the couch as well beside her. But she didn't even move at all, and the blankets were piled on the seat that I was going to sit down on, because we only have a small couch here, like a 2-seater couch, which at some point we want to get a bigger couch, but right now we only have a 2-seater couch. She had done that many times already, where I had to ask her, where do you want to sit, or can I sit down please, or can you please move the blanket, can you please sit up properly so I can sit down too. Like, I had to always mention that to her, or a lot of the time. And this time I was just really annoyed because she didn't budge one single bit, knowing and seeing that I wanted to sit down there, and didn't even move the blanket that she was using, which was taking over my entire spot. I got annoyed basically and said, like, oh, come on, Amy, can you please move? You see that I want to sit down. And then I had to grab the blankets, the spare ones that were also on my side, and I had to move them and ask her to like move because she was taking over my seat as well. So it was just very ignorant in my opinion, and it just annoyed me because this was like another time I had to mention it to her without her noticing herself, oh, she's taking over so much space. And she got annoyed at me then, basically saying like, yeah, you can move the blankets yourself and there's enough space for you to sit down. And Dad observed it and he was like, Amy, no, I did see there wasn't enough space. And that's not even the point. Even if there was, it's just ignorant that she doesn't even budge, doesn't even like look at the other person's needs. Like, she just has that trait in her where she focuses mainly on herself in a lot of situations and doesn't really care that much about what other people need or want. But yeah, after that we called Mom right away, saying goodnight to her. Like, we call them every evening in Ireland. So we basically called Mom, and Amy was in a bad mood the whole time and she barely spoke a single word. And I basically blamed myself for that, and I thought she was being annoyed and angry at me. And even though I think it was okay, like, what I said, because I was just annoyed and whatever, I know that I could have said it in a nicer way as well. It's still like, yeah, I was like, is she like that because of me now, and did I do something wrong? So basically I was beating myself up, and I've written this down, so that's why I'm looking down on the sheet, but I was beating myself up for being annoyed at Amy, and then for her being in a bad mood after it. I just felt like crying afterwards because of various things that were going on in my mind. That was the weekend where I was also anxious for like the Tuesday of work and teaching the older class. So there was already a lot going on in me. So I just felt like I needed to cry. So I afterwards, I went upstairs to my room and asked Mom if I could just privately talk to her. And basically I kind of just told her the story in short form and said to her how, like, yeah, I mean, I feel like I could have been nicer, I could have said it in a nicer way, and stuff. And Mom immediately told me to stop. She was like, Leona, stop. And then I said, but I probably overreacted a bit, I probably could have been nicer. And Mom interrupted me again and said to stop. And I'm allowed to be annoyed, and I'm allowed to express those feelings. It doesn't make me a bad person, and it's not my fault that Amy is feeling this way. So when she said that, when she told me, like, I was about to, like, I was continuing my self-talk and beating myself up. I was like continuing to say, but I could have been nicer, I probably overreacted and stuff. And then the second time she said, stop, you're allowed to be annoyed. You're allowed to, you know, feel that way and express that as well. It doesn't immediately make you a bad person. And like, it's not my fault for the way Amy is feeling, because that's the way she perceived it. She wasn't able to manage her thinking in that moment. So it's not my fault, and it was okay. It wasn't like a bad thing. I expressed that I was annoyed, and it doesn't make me a bad person. And when she said those words and basically told me to stop, and then I had to stop beating myself up, I immediately teared up, and immediately tears ran down my face, and I noticed yeah, it's okay that I felt annoyed, and it's okay that I expressed those feelings, and it doesn't make me a bad person, and it's not my fault that Amy was annoyed afterwards or in a bad mood. So I just had this moment of comfort. So I wrote it down here. Then I broke out into sobs, recognized how much I was beating myself up, and allowed myself to stop. Yeah, in that moment I only realized and recognized that I'm really beating myself up. Before that I didn't really recognize those thoughts. And then I allowed myself to stop, which in the past I wouldn't have, because I would have been no, you're a bad person, so you deserve to be beaten up, you shouldn't have done that, you should have known better, don't ever do that again, stuff like that. But this time I allowed myself to stop and realize I'm not a bad person, and all I did was express how I felt. Once Mom told me to stop, I felt like I was allowed to. Not yet can I allow myself, because I don't know or still believe I might deserve being beaten up or was a bad person and shouldn't have done this. So yeah, so once Mom told me, Leona, stop, that's when I allowed myself to stop beating myself up. But if she wouldn't have said that, I would have kept thinking and believing that, no, I deserve to be beaten up. I could have been nicer. I should have been nicer. This is my fault. She's in a bad mood because of me. Maybe I overreacted, I would have kept beating myself up, and I wouldn't have known if it was okay for me to stop beating myself up, because maybe that made me a bad person, if I did something mean or hurt another person and then didn't beat myself up for that, that would be so ignorant of me, I feel like. But this time I was no, it's okay for me to be annoyed, it's okay the way I reacted. I just expressed my feelings, and I'm allowed to stop beating myself up for this. I'm allowed to be who I am. I'm allowed to feel the way I feel. And then the last thing I wrote down is just, soon I can allow myself to stop beating myself up. I'm allowed to express how I feel. This is a pain from the past, from my depression, not being allowed to express how I feel, not being allowed to explain my side, always being blamed for everything, for everyone else's feelings as well as my own, for everyone else's problems as well as my own. Especially by Dad, also by Mom, mainly by Dad, and then me agreeing with it. So I agreed, or else it wouldn't have hurt me as much as it did. It was because I agreed with it and because I believed it, and I was yeah, that makes me a bad person, oh my god, it's all my fault, and blah blah blah. So yeah, anyway, this was a nice situation in the end, and afterwards I actually went downstairs and I didn't beat myself up for Amy being in a bad mood, and I didn't feel like I was an absolutely horrible person, and I just was at peace in my own mind. And I asked Amy if she's in a bad mood because of what just happened between us, and she said no, she isn't actually. So yeah. Anyway, she was in a bad mood because of something else, but anyway, the point is me beating myself up and finally allowing me to stop, and Mom persisting on telling me, Leona, stop. And I was first persistent on explaining how I did something bad, and then she was Leona, stop, you're allowed to feel the way you feel, geez, don't beat yourself up, you're allowed to have emotions, you're allowed to express yourself, relax, woman. So yeah, that was nice. Anyway, yeah, she also said that if I ever need her help again with something like that, because I'm not able to stop myself or allow myself to stop, she said that she's going to help me. So until I'm able to, do that myself, and that's what I'm working towards. yeah, I think I'm going to make this a separate video because it's 10 minutes long and the other one is already over an hour long. So yeah, this is just another short video about progress I'm making, things I'm learning, the things that happened this week, which were all pretty big like accomplishments for me and I was very, very proud of. So yeah, this is one of the first things that happened this week, which was a bit more dramatic or whatever. So yeah, okay, see you next time. Bye.